This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 14 of season 2 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, April 3rd, 1909. I'll elaborate on what was happening in Westford 114 years ago as we read. The first section in this issue was the About Town section. Mrs. Sarah Richardson of Brookside on the Lowell Road, who has seen the sun rise over 32,850 times, that comes out to 90 years, is ill at her home, largely the result incidental to the age that can witness so many revolutions of the earth, lighted by sunlight and moonlight. Miss Riggs, R-E-I-G-S, her companion and nurse, is also ill with the grippe. Dr. Wells is in attendance, and disease looks as though it would be shamed out of attacking such aged people. Marshall's Hall on the town line at Westford Corner has been leased to an Italian from Milford, New Hampshire, for a term of years. He will open a store on the lower floor. The skyward floor will be fitted up with sleeping bunks, a sort of steerage passage affair. Alvin G. Poley, who has been ill, is improved and was able to say present at the roll call of, quote, time at the 80th call last Saturday. That is, he was present at his 80th birthday party. At the gathering of his children on that occasion, he was presented with an easy chair and other attractions to help induce many more roll calls and make their coming easy. James H. O'Brien is obliged to approach recovery slowly and cautiously, with occasional days when what has been recovered has to be recovered again. Mary, the oldest girl, who has competed with her father in illness, is likely to win out and is nearly back to normal. Several from town will avail themselves of the opportunity for the excursion rates from Boston to Washington, Friday, April 9th. This was for President Taft's inauguration. Among those who are going are Selectman Oscar R. Spaulding and wife, Charlotte Prescott, William R. Taylor, and Mr. Spaulding's nephew from Chelmsford. At a meeting of the Selectmen Saturday evening to open sealed bids for Superintendent of Roads, lo and behold, Frank E. Miller, the blacksmith, was low man in figures, and he got the appointment. Well, why not? He is a good blacksmith and desirable citizen, and there is no evidence, either straight or cross-eyed, that he will not make an efficient road superintendent. The bidders were John A. Healy, Fred A. Shorey, Angus MacDonald, and Frank E. Miller. The next meeting of the Fortnightly Club will be held at the Lion Schoolhouse Friday evening, April 9th, when the following question is expected to be discussed. Resolved that a 12% standard for milk is for the best interest of the producer and consumer. The 12% standard was for a measurement of the total solids in the milk. Speaking for the affirmative, Samuel L. Taylor. For the negative, DeLacy Corkum of Billerica. This is a live question that the consumers are a unit on and the producers are many units, hence the inability of the Legislature Committee on Agriculture to fix a standard that is satisfactory to warring factions. Everybody interested can appoint themselves as a debater on this question and call it a sort of sub-legislature hearing. There's no results. I guess this is for a coming meeting, isn't it? I was going to mention that the Lion Schoolhouse, also known as the Wright Schoolhouse, was located on Groton Road near Gould Street. The next section is a death. Dr. Charles W. Harwood, who lived in Worcester at the home of his mother, died in Worcester at the home of his mother Thursday, March 25th, was a native of Westford and was born in the Brookside precinct, in the house now occupied by Charles Watt, near the residence of Theodore H. Hamblett. When about 5 years old, his father sold his real estate in Westford and moved to Worcester. He was cousin to Mrs. Hobart, the widow of former Vice President Hobart of the United States. This was Garrett Augustus Hobart, who was vice president under President William McKinley from 1897 until Hobart's death from heart failure in 1899. Hobart was replaced by Theodore Roosevelt, and not long after that, McKinley was assassinated and Roosevelt became president. Mrs. Hobart was present at the funeral. The deceased was 52 years old and had been in ill health for 2 years from a complication of troubles, the immediate cause of death being assigned to pleurisy. The next section is entertainment. Just as was anticipated, the Enterprise Club of the Unitarian Church furnished an evening of varied and quickly succeeding scenes and experiences to a large audience at the town hall last week Friday evening in the comedy play Scenes in Union Depot. And then there's a list of the cast of the play that's rather lengthy. It was quite a long cast. The play was under the direction of Miss Harriet Harris of Weymouth, who has done efficient work in this line in our town before. Expenses were heavy, but about $37 were cleared for the benefit of the Enterprise Club. The next section is called Spring Movements. Samuel L. Taylor, while hunting for moths Tuesday, came across 2 snakes which were hunting for warm weather, spring, and victuals. This would seem to indicate that spring was just coming around the corner of winter, where it had been hidden several months. The next section is the Westford Center section. Miss Eva Young of London, England, who was Miss Helen Frost's guest last summer, is again a most welcome member of the Frost household. Miss May Day is at home from the spring vacation at Mount Holyoke College. She would later become the head librarian at the J.V. Fletcher Library. The library opened Tuesday after its usual annual closing, during which it has been thoroughly cleaned. The plan is to be tried for the convenience of the patrons of loaning magazines, the same as books, all except the current numbers. They're still doing that, as a matter of fact. Word was received about 11 o'clock Tuesday forenoon by Leonard W. Wheeler, captain of the Edward M. Abbott Hose Company, that the house on the William Kittredge farm, occupied by William L. Woods, was on fire. Without losing a second's time, Mr. Wheeler was putting into effect the most efficacious means of gathering his men when a second message came over the telephone that it was under control and outside help was not needed. It seemed that a kettle of boiling fat had taken fire, and for a few moments things looked ominous, but Mrs. Woods, with help from nearby neighbors, succeeded in putting the fire out with but comparatively little damage. The next section is the Tadmont Club section. There was a good attendance of members and guests present at the regular meeting of the Tadmont Club in Library Hall Tuesday afternoon for the program, which promised to be one of interest. The turnout was in no way disappointing. The members were pleased to have the president, Miss Loker, who has been detained at home with an attack of grippe, in her accustomed place. At the business session, the matter of increasing the annual membership fee was put to vote by written ballot and defeated. I believe the fee was $1 a year. It was voted to reconsider the plan of Gentleman's Night to Guest Night. They changed the name from Gentleman's Night to Guest Night. All members who had husbands and wished to invite them to do so, and others privileged to invite one guest, either lady or gentleman. A small assessment will be placed upon each member to meet the expense of this. The subject of the afternoon was Women of the North and South during the Civil War. Mrs. Charles L. Hildreth read the first paper, a thoroughly well-written and well-delivered portrayal of the part of our northern women in the great struggle, of their loyalty and devotion, privation and suffering, an account of those who worked at home and those who went as nurses. Mrs. Herbert V. Hildreth's paper on the women of the South during those eventful days fully merited the close the close and appreciating attention it received to the last work. It was a vivid and eloquent account of those women, many of whom had known only luxury and ease, but in those days of hardship were constantly enduring and sacrificing to the army who wore the gray. The subject so ably treated from both sides was ever the same heart-stirring narrative, equally to those who remember those days of the Great Civil War and to those who have been born since. Miss Miranda G. Luce interspersed the two papers with one entitled Personal Recollections of a Young Girl During the War, telling in her own keen, entertaining style many happenings in our town during those 4 years. Miss Luce was born in Westford in 1841 and lived here during the Civil War. She was the daughter of Reverend Leonard Luce. He was born in 1799, and in 1829 he became the first pastor of the Union Congregational Church on Lincoln Street, now the Parish Center for the Arts. He served that church from 1829 to 1852 in that capacity. The next section is the Graniteville section. Many of the young men of this village who are to take part in the local minstrel show attended the Cohen and Harris performance at the Lowell Opera House on last Saturday and picked many pointers for the coming entertainment. No suitable person has been selected as yet to portray the part of the bathing, quote, bathing girl, end quote, as given by Julian Eltinge, Eltinge, on last Saturday. The Cohen of Cohen and Harris was George M. Cohen, born 1878 and died in 1942, and Harris was Sam Harris, born in 1872, died in 1941. They worked as a team from 1904 to 1926 to produce musical comedies for Broadway that also toured the country, also known as vaudeville. In 1909, they produced the Cohen and Harris Minstrels, which featured George Honeyboy Evans and female impersonator Julian Eltinge. So that was the reference to finding somebody to be a female impersonator. The next section is baseball. The members of the baseball club that are to represent Charles G. Sargent's machine shop here during the coming summer have now formed a permanent organization and are putting in light practice work daily in preparation for the coming game with the Abbott Worsted Company team that is scheduled to take place on April 19th, Patriots Day. The shop team is fully equipped with gloves, mask, protector, bats, etc. This fact being made possible by the voluntary contributions of the employees in the shop. William Gordon, the well-known athlete, is manager and pitcher for this club, while the backstop work will be done by that veteran catcher, Jack Queasy, who is well known in sporting circles in this and surrounding towns. The shop boys are sure of victory, but the members of the AWC, the Abbott Worsted Company, are not saying a word, for they know with such a battery as Tom McCarthy and Bill Ledwith, and with such seasoned players as Bob McCarthy, Eddie Defoe, and others equally as good to draw from, that they will make the shop fellows wish that they had never selected April 19th for the day to meet their Waterloo. The village people are very much interested in this contest, and numerous wagers are already being made as to the final outcome. The last section is the Ford's Village section. The Ladies' Sewing Circle met with Miss Edith Foster at her home, formerly the Whittier Farm, Thursday afternoon. Miss Foster sent a barge for the ladies and also conveyed them to their home. There were 11 present, beside the hostess. After the usual business and a social hour, a very dainty luncheon was served. Miss Marion Sweat assisted Miss Foster in serving. Miss Evelyn Fernald from Vassar College was present. There were a number of the circle unable to be present owing to illness. Mrs. Winnie Larkin is very sick with no hopes of recovery. Miss Margaret O'Hara, assistant district nurse in Concord, New Hampshire, is caring for her. And that's the news in Westford for the week ending April 3rd, 1909. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Nick Woodbury of WestfordCAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions and podcasts from the Wardsman at our website at museum.westford.org or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from a century ago. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.